All right, g'day guys, Jason here, dialing in for another 5-minute lesson today. So today I want to talk about cash flow, what it means to you as a property investor, and how to understand cash flow, because I think a lot of people don't really get how cash flow works when it comes to real estate. And certainly in and around this thing called negative gearing and negative cash flow and positive cash flow and positively geared and all this sort of stuff. So today I want to talk about that and sort of demystify that a bit and explain it a little bit so we can really sink our teeth into this idea or understand what it means in this world of cash flow and understanding your cash flow as a property investor. So let's take a look at this today. Let me jump into it here. What I've done is I've said, okay, let's take just a regular house of $550,000. Maybe it rents for about $500 a week. That's sort of the mid-range of this scenario. We're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about what it looks like on both sides of the fence here, if it was renting for more or renting for less, and where you might find these types of properties and how this works. So let's have a look at this. I'm talking at that in the middle, it's about a 5% yield. So let's talk about negative cash flow. Negative cash flow is when the rent comes in, you pay for the interest, you pay for the rates, the insurance, the maintenance, you pay for everything, and it's still, after all of that, you go to the ATO, or not the ATO, you go to your accountant, you do your taxes, you get some taxes back, and it's still negative cash flow out of your pocket for the year. This property here, if it was a brand new property, and we did the analysis, I've got a spreadsheet that I use, a property investment calculator I use, it would be negative cash flow $10,000 if it was renting for $400 a week. So that's below 4.5% gross yield or less. Okay, so in many of the cities, certainly Melbourne and Sydney, you're getting a very low yield in some of those places if you're not keeping an eye out for what you need. Now, under 5% yield and the property new, even with your tax deductions back, this is before tax, negative $10,000, negative $10,900, and this is after tax. Even with your taxes back, it's still negative cash flow, okay? Negative cash flow using the negative gearing. This is the part where you negative gear, get your cash back for your depreciation and your cost of the property, and it's still negative cash flow. If that property was secondhand or older, right, it's still negative cash flow before tax, and at the moment, the tax deductions and the negative gearing and the depreciation is less, and secondhand property is worse. It's more negative cash flow. So our preference is, as a property investor, that we don't play in this lane. This lane, for most people, is the lane you don't want to be in. It's not your lane to play in, so stay out of it, okay? Properties that have got a 4.5% yield or less tend to be negative cash flow pre-tax and after tax, even with negative gearing, and second-hand properties in this space are even worse for cash flow. Now let's go to the next example, which is kind of the Goldilocks example. It's not too hot and it's not too cold. It's just about right, okay? Now, if this property we can get a $500 a week rent, which is around about, or is a 4.5% and above. Really over here, guys, it's more like the 4%, okay? 4% or under. Between 4 and 4.5 is kind of stomachable sometimes, but I'm just using this as an example. 4.5 and under, start looking at your cash flow. 4.5 and up is where we want to be, gross rental yield, okay? Net rental yield, depending on what you own, whether it's a house, a townhouse, or a unit, you might want to have a look at it. So 4.5% plus, all right, if that's a new property, it's negative cash flow before tax. You go and get your tax back, okay, depreciation and all that sort of stuff, and now it's positive cash flow, $1,385. Positive cash flow, real money in your pocket. You're not paying it out, it's putting money in your pocket, now we're talking. If this property is second-hand, okay, the challenge is that it's negative cash flow pre-tax, and you go to get your tax back and it's still negative cash flow. So really, the thing in this space here, the new properties are better for buy and hold property investors. New property in this range, big tick. Yes, that's what we want, all right? So second-hand property in this range is negative cash flow. So I would be, if your cash flow is an issue for you, be not holding those properties if you are a buy and hold passive growth investor. Now let's go over here into the nirvana where we would absolutely love everything to be positive cash flow into the future, which would be great. And if we could buy it today, that'd be awesome. Now, there are some properties out there, some properties that you can rent short term, in good locations and so on, that you can get better yields on. But by and large, the properties that we look at with high yields tend to be in regional locations, or you have to do something with them that is not the norm. So you have to rent them out by room, or etc. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but if you're a passive investor, you're not wanting to do this all day, every day, then this might not be your cup of tea. But you need a 6% plus yield for the property to be positive cash flow before tax, and even more positive cash flow after tax. So 6% plus, okay? And for the downside of this is you end up going out into locations often, or having properties often that aren't the ones that are going to give you the growth, okay? So I'm absolutely fine and happy if you can achieve that, but not at the cost of growth as a property investor. Second-hand properties, again, it's positive cash flow, but again, it's reduced here because the cash flow or the tax back for a second-hand property is not much chop. So hopefully that helped you today. Every single style of cash flow uses negative gearing, okay? It's all used. Whether it's still positive cash flow, you can negatively gear a positive cash flow property, which means getting some tax back. Every single one of these can use the negative gearing. Negative cash flow, no. Positive cash flow after tax, big tick, start there. If your properties can be positive cash flow pre-tax and after tax, awesome too. So hopefully that was a good lesson, guys. Let me know any comments below if you want any other lessons or things to do. But until I see you in person, maybe at one of our events or catch up one-on-one, bye for now.